Hey, good morning. I'm John Rhoads. This is Rhoads Life Coaching, and I have an interesting twist, at least for me, an interesting twist on a standard idea. How do you define what is enough? We speak a lot, we use the word enough frequently, but do you ever take time to define it? It's an interesting thing in the coaching world. I help folks to set goals and priorities and values and vision, but we talk about it in terms of the goal itself, not in terms of actually what is enough. And defining that kind of creates a twist and a different perspective, and hopefully a helpful perspective on an old idea. The word enough connotates that we have a lower limit and an upper limit to something. You can very clearly think of examples, maybe even especially in terms of your parents, of that's enough, stop. Or the idea of this wasn't enough and it needs a little bit more. Thinking about that, of there's boundaries to that, there's room to move around inside of defining what is enough. Enough also has a time limit to it in terms of what's enough today, what's enough this week, what's enough for this year, and those all change based on the time frame. So thinking about that for yourself, how do you define it? The topic matters. What's enough money? What's enough time? Pick a topic and starting to think about where are the boundaries of not enough or too much. It's also an interesting thing in that if we don't define enough, usually we default to needing more. And our culture gets stuck in that loop of always needing more. And that by having to have more, by it not being enough, we're constantly pushing forward and trying to create something that was difficult to create in the first place, and needing more of it, and it becomes a trap. Starting to then look at how you're defining enough and what is enough for you on a specific topic becomes an interesting conversation, because there might be subtleties that you hadn't thought of before. Money's always a difficult conversation, but what is enough money for today? What is enough money for a month? What is enough money for the next 10 years? Dramatically changes what's too little and what's too much. Rarely do we ever talk about what's too much money. So as always, take some time and think about that for yourself this week. Where are there areas where defining enough might be a helpful tool and a helpful perspective that you haven't used before? Where are there areas where we know that we need a little bit more and it's not enough? And where would there be areas where we know that we have too much, or we feel that we're overwhelmed, and that enough in between would be a much more stable and satisfying amount? Think about that for yourself. I'd be happy to continue that conversation. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave comments below. I'm John Rhoads. This is Rhoads Life Coaching. I hope you're able to find purpose and meaning in daily life.